Hello, everyone, and welcome to the O Mindfulness online guided meditation. Thank you for being here. And I'm happy to welcome Francois and Wendy and Florence. I think you're all there. And today we're going to share 10 minutes mindfulness of the breath and a few more words on being with the difficult. And that's a subject that comes up a lot, and there are many different ways of looking at it. And so today we're just going to have another glimpse, because it's really helpful to have this familiarity with the uncomfortable. And so with that in mind, while we meditate together, I'm going to invite you to notice what happens if something disagreeable comes up. And maybe that's a thought that arises, a worry. It might be an emotion, a sad or a low feeling, anxiety. It might be a physical sensation. Maybe you're uncomfortable with the way you're sitting. And just notice how that feels. What happens when something arises which is not in line with what you would have wished? And as a reminder, mindfulness is about being with whatever is present. So when those uncomfortable things come up, can we just be with them? Can we notice them and say, there you are, that's what's happening now? And it helps to be really kind with ourselves. It helps to be warm and compassionate. It helps to be our own best friend. And when we're not being like that, when we're not being nice to ourselves, just noticing that we're getting critical or judgmental, and being kind with that too. There we are. So let's join together with a posture that helps to support an alert attitude. So when we sit in a fairly regal posture, that helps us to be awake and open. And at the same time, we need to have a sense of ease as well. So it's that finely tuned posture that helps to support the same finely tuned attitude of being present but not trying too hard, of being alert but not rigid or fixed. So adjusting a little bit, finding that place where we are as comfortable as possible, knowing that it's impossible to be 100% comfortable all the time, and working with the times that we're not. So closing our eyes, for 10 minutes, mindfulness of the breath. Coming into an awareness of the body sitting. Focusing our attention kindly on how it feels to sit. And where can we feel ourselves sitting? Our contact with the chair or the cushion. Maybe noticing also our feet and how they feel to be resting on the floor or folded underneath. And we're interested in picking up the physical sensations present. So we're feeling ourselves sitting rather than thinking about it. And we might like to notice our hands as well. Any warmth, touch, tingling, contact, coming into the body, brings us into the moment. Those messages from our senses are arriving in each moment. And by noticing them, we come into that direct experience of now. So it's not a moment as a conceptual thing. It's the moment as we actually feel it. And then inviting our attention to the breath. Breathing naturally. And noticing perhaps movement of the tummy, the rib cage, even movements perhaps around in the back and under the shoulder blades. And maybe movement of air in the nostrils, cooler and warmer. Noticing where we can sense the breath. And then noticing where the mind wanders off to. As we're focusing on the breath, we might find ourselves off with a thought, involved in a story, and as soon as we notice we have drifted in this way, we have a choice point where we can decide to come back to the body and the breath. Following the breath all the way in and all the way out. Carefully and kindly noticing the different physical sensations that flow one after another as the body breathes all by itself. Following this breath, and this one. Observing the natural flux of the breath and of the attention, which drifts and comes back, and very often drifts again. So can we view this process with kindness, with interest? And can we dwell on the breath? And if any discomfort arises, whether it's a sense of disappointment or a stiff back, can we notice how that feels and what happens? And can we be with the difficult or the uncomfortable with the same kindness and interest as we would employ for calm and agreeable moments? Coming back to the breath, feeling perhaps our clothes moving against our skin as the rib cage rises and falls. Can we feel cool air passing in the nostrils, in the back of the throat? And can we notice a myriad of subtle sensations as the breath flows naturally in and out? Being kind and accepting, whether we consider our experience to be pleasant or not. And just 2 more breaths in mindful awareness. Picking up the detail. And finishing with extra warmth and kindness. And when we're ready, opening our eyes. Maybe having a little stretch or a yawn. Being with the difficult is a useful skill to master. And I was discussing it at some length with some mindfulness colleagues, some other teachers, and one of whom has worked a great deal with mindfulness and pain through the Breathworks program. And she pointed out that we're constantly aware of whether we're having a disagreeable moment, an agreeable moment, or something that is neutral. And we're monitoring all the time. And when we consider something to be uncomfortable or disagreeable, we automatically, if we're not being mindful, we go into aversion. So we try and push away that which is unpleasant. And in so doing, we can constrict and we can close ourselves down. And that means we are also constricted and closed down towards the agreeable. And so when we practice being with everything that's happening as it is, it's particularly useful to work with the uncomfortable first, because once we approach the uncomfortable with interest, with warmth, with curiosity, and we move towards it, we actually step out of aversion. So that pushing away that we had been experiencing, that closing down and constriction will subside, and we will find ourselves more able to embrace, to move towards, and in so doing, we have a more expanded and creative view, which in turn allows us to have a more creative and expanded view towards the agreeable things in our lives. So the aversion to the difficult sneaks in anytime we're on autopilot, anytime we're not mindful. It's what the body does. Something's unpleasant and we push away, whether we're conscious of it or not. And I had a couple of examples of this in the last few days. In fact, yesterday we were out doing some off-piste skiing, and it was a fabulous day, powder and sunshine and wonderful people. And we were climbing one of the ridges, and there it was, cold air, thin air, not a lot of oxygen to breathe. And even with the cold temperatures, one gets hot with the climb. And I was striding along and feeling the discomfort in my body of the effort and the temperature differences. And I was automatically just looking at the tails of the skis in front of me, of the person in front of me, and in a way restricting my experience. And then I became aware that that's what I was doing. I was in aversion against the struggle of the climb, albeit not too intense. And so then I realized, and I opened up and I looked up and I saw the sparkles in the snow and the beautiful vista, and actually enjoyed that feeling of the body working and embracing the feeling of being a bit hot and sweaty and uncomfortable in that way. And my whole experience expanded. And so there had been this automatic aversion to the physical exertion. And once I stepped in and embraced, then the whole experience opened up and I was able to notice all the other agreeable things that were happening too. And another time driving back late from Geneva, it was snowing, it was dark, and I just had a long trip to Bangor University for my course. And there was an automatic thought, this is a lot of driving and maybe it's going to be snowy when I get up the mountains and I'll have to put on my chains. And I realized that I was in fact just on autopilot, just assuming that it was a lot and a demand and a big effort. And really, it was fine. It was beautiful along the shores of Lake Annecy with the snow coming down, and there weren't many cars on the road because it was so late. And I realized that I had just automatically gone into aversion, maybe because I was a bit tired. And anyway, it stopped snowing and I got up the mountain and it was all fine. So I think over and over we can be experiencing aversion to the difficult, putting ourselves into a closed down mood, and we don't realize that we're doing that. And if we had a mindful moment, we might be able to take stock, embrace the difficult, realize that we were going into aversion, and be able to approach, as we have done in meditation, move towards our experience, and in so doing, we expand our view and we see more possibilities. We're more aware of the agreeable, and it's not just the difficult which fills up our whole vision. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to sharing another mindfulness meditation with you very shortly online. And this week, I invite you to take a few moments, check in, and notice, are you slipping automatically into aversion? Thanks for being here, and have a mindful week. Bye.